Hey there, patrons. Randy Sullivan coming to you with a very special piece of bonus content. I am going to sample and give a review of a whiskey that currently is selling for about $10,000 retail. So the backstory on this one, Brad Bonds of Revival Spirits gave me a sample from this really special vintage bottle that he had acquired for his vintage liquor store. Shout out to Brad. If you're ever in Northern Kentucky near New Riff or Party Source, his liquor store, which is vintage, is just a few minutes away. You can get birth year bottles there and all of that stuff. It's called Revival Spirits, and I believe the website is revivalspiritsky.com. So this special sample that he gave me is from what's called LDI, but it's from the distillery that's currently known as Ross and Squibb. And before it was Ross and Squibb, it was MGPI. And before it was MGPI, it was LDI. So kind of the whole backstory is in 1933, Seagram's, which was a Canadian company that was run by a bootlegger that got rich during Prohibition, bought the plant that we all know now as MGP or Ross and Squibb. And in 2000, his son was in some financial trouble, and he ended up selling the distillery to Pernod Ricard. And they ended up changing the name to LDI, which stood for Lawrenceburg Distillery. And so it's actually in Lawrenceburg. So they changed the name in 2000. And in 2007, Pernod Ricard sold it to a company called CL Financial Group. But it was a really bad time to buy the distillery. There were some bad shifts in the industry. We had the housing crisis in the United States. The economy was in the toilet, and they ended up going into bankruptcy. And LDI operated under the authority of a bankruptcy court for a number of years. And, you know, it was troubling times if you're an LDI employee. The economy wasn't good. There weren't a lot of opportunities out there. And many of them remained loyal during those turbulent times and stayed at the distillery the entire time they were in receivership. In 2011, Midwest Grain Products bought LDI out of bankruptcy and changed the name to MGPI for Midwest Grain Products. And then in 2001, MGP and Lux Row combined, and they renamed the distillery Ross and Squibb. But this bottle is very special because the LDI employees who remained loyal during that turmoil were given this as a gift. The label actually says, "Thanks for being a part of our success." And it has the dates July 2007 through December 2011 on it. The mash bill is the 95% rye mash bill, which is part of the reason why I have the Prideful Goat out here, because all of my ryes are from that distillery, and they are all the same mash bill as this bottle. The main difference is that this bottle was released in 2011, and it had aged in barrel for 23 years. That is insane. So this is a 23-year aged rye whiskey that aged its entire life at MGP or Ross and Squibb. It was never offered for sale, which is pretty interesting because since they weren't selling it, they were giving it away to employees. They didn't have to have a TTB compliant label. So there is no proof on this label. It just says that it's barrel proof and that it was unfiltered and untampered with, right? But one of the interesting things about that aging facility is that because of where it's located, there's a river that runs alongside it. It's kind of below grade. There's kind of a berm that separates the river from the buildings, and the buildings are very well insulated because they're made of brick. It's really high humidity and very low temperature change, and that causes the barrels to drink up water as they age. So chances are, after 23 years, this product would be below 100 proof at cask strength without any proofing down. I've seen some 14, 15-year-old barrels from this distillery that were like at 96 proof at cask strength. Although you can't find any that are that old anymore because they're just too valuable. So since it was never offered for sale, we don't know what the SRP was. But as I mentioned in the intro, Brad said that this bottle trades at vintage liquor stores for about $10,000. It was 750 mLs. And so I thought maybe I would just smell it and taste it up. What is shocking is that the nose on this vintage 23-year-old is not like incredibly different from my 8-year that we just released as a limited time offer. It's still got that classic MGP rye nose that everybody seems to love. Huh. That is interesting. It doesn't taste overly oaky, which I kind of expected it to be really, really oaky. There's a hint of dill that's coming through. And a pine needle. But shockingly, almost no caramel. Almost no like sweet notes, almost no floral notes. It's like mostly like dill, pine needle, and it does taste hotter than 100 proof. So I don't know, maybe this, was made from barrels that were really at the very tip top of the warehouse. Maybe they didn't drop in proof like MGP barrels typically do. There's some barrel chunks floating around in here because I don't think they filtered this. Yeah, on the palate, my modern release, much rounder palate, a lot more flavor in the mid palate to compete with those spicier rye notes. I'm not even getting a ton of like caramel, or sorry, not caramel, but like clove or nutmeg out of the 23-year-old. And so I don't know how much of that has to do with changes that took place while it was in the barrel for 23 years or changes that have taken place in the bottle since it's been, bottled for, 13 years now. I would guess that those were changes that took place in the barrel. But anyway, super interesting side-by-side. I hope you like the history of this particular release. And I hope it was exciting for you to hear that even the old stuff still has a lot of similarities to the modern releases. So you're not missing out on too much if you didn't feel like spending $10,000 for a bottle. But anyway, I hope you enjoyed this. As a Patreon member, I cannot thank you enough. This economy's been difficult on everybody. Lots of people have had to drop off the support because, financial times are hard. And for those of you who have been financially able to stick with us, we cannot thank you enough. We love you. We'll talk to you soon.